First of all, what even is a cold air intake? Well, let's start off with your stock intake. Your stock intakes are plastic and very restrictive and just plain ugly. Now let's talk about your performance cold air intake. Cold air intakes are usually made up of nice, shiny metal and are way less restrictive. It allows more air to go into the engine, and as some of us may know, the more air and fuel you can get into the engine, the more power you can make. But the harsh reality is this: with a cold air intake, you will only make 2 to 5 more horsepower, max. So really, they're just for looks. And they just make your engine louder and just overall sound a lot better. But if you're still wondering why in God's name would he buy a performance part from eBay in the first place, first of all, I am an extremely broke college student. And since we're talking about very, very minimal horsepower gains, I didn't want to trade almost $300 for 2 or 3 more horsepower. So after reading a bunch of forums about these eBay cold air intakes, I decided to do even more extensive research. Basically, the feedback I got was that the welds on the piping is pretty decent, but the air filters are pretty much useless. Fortunately, you can buy performance air filters at your local auto parts store. So, after all the research was done, I came up with a plan that I was going to make a cold air intake for my vehicle that sounded nice, looked good, and was perfectly safe for my vehicle, all under $100. So, this is the box that this eBay cold air intake came from. I think it's from like XYZ Tuning, something like that. We're going to unbox it and see how this thing looks. Alright, so we got like a little kitchen knife here. Start taking off some of this tape. Alright, so we got some piping here. It looks pretty nice from the outside, I guess, but I guess you don't really know until you open it up. Okay, so here's one of the pipes. It's some kind of like residue stuff in there. I don't really know what that stuff is. The welds look pretty nice on these. They look pretty decent. My dad does a lot of TIG welding, MIG welding, so these don't look that bad. They look decent. This piece looks pretty solid. Just a little 90-degree elbow there. Here's some of your hose clamps and whatnot. Couple hose clamps. Got some different rubber pieces. And some nuts and bolts and washers, of course. Set those to the side. Might want to put those in a bag or something later. And I'm guessing this last little box in here is the crappy air filter that they probably sent me. But yeah, here's the air filter they sent me. Don't really know if I'm going to use this. Probably not going to use this for very long. Probably stick it on there for like 50, 100 miles until I could just grab me a good K&N air filter. I mean, it doesn't look terrible or anything. Might be able to use it for a little while. So yeah, once again, as you can see, the welding on these is pretty good, I would say. I mean, it's not like epic, top-notch stuff, but I mean, it doesn't look horrible. So later today, possibly tomorrow, I'm gonna see if I can get this on my TC. So this is what it looked like completely stock before we sought out to make any changes. Because of the fact that I found so many on the internet, this is not an install or how-to video. I'm just trying to see if I can make this cold air intake work for under $100. So specifics of the installation will not be shown. Now we ended up having to bend and modify the first pipe slightly, which can be done with a simple vice grip, which I kinda expected it because the intake was only $54. And if you do own a Scion TC, you probably know that most cold air intake kits have to be dropped down into the fender. This is something that I did not want to do, because I didn't like the way it looked. I wanted to go for a short ram cold air intake look. So at first we completely discarded the 90-degree elbow. So we put the air filter straight on the end of the first pipe. And it ran great for the most part, but there were some issues. The air cleaner was completely slammed into the fender. And this bracket was not letting us slide the air cleaner on all the way. So we took that 90-degree elbow and cut it and put it directly on the throttle body. Then connected the other pipe, followed by cutting off the bracket. Then I made a run to my local O'Reilly's parts store and picked up a short Spectra air cleaner. And this was our end result. And the car runs fantastic. And the sound that I got from it was better than I expected. Well, I do like the way it looks. And the sound that it produces makes this little stick shift coupe that much more fun to drive. And the final amount paid to make this cold air intake ended up being around $78.